Hi, everyone, and warm welcome to our webinar, Digital Learning as the New Norm, Empowering Educational Institutions Amidst COVID-19. Today, we are joined by digital transformation experts as they share best practices in remote learning from around the globe. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our three guests. We are joined by Dr. Rani Burchmore, the Education Channel Director for Microsoft. She leads the Education Transformation Strategy for the Microsoft Education Partner Ecosystem in Asia. We also have TechOne co-founder and CEO Lars Jeppesen, who has over 3 decades of robust experience as a business leader and technology strategist. And last but definitely not the least, Enadoc CTO and co-founder Wasantha Weerakoone, who is a prominent business leader in Sri Lanka and is an expert in digital transformation technologies, covering content services, automation, and data and AI. Now, how is everyone doing today? Everyone good?
Thank you, doing great. Thank you,
We're
Ara.
doing great. Great. Thank you, Ara.
That's great to hear. Now we have an exciting 45 minutes ahead of us, so let's jump in. Now, my first question is for all three of you. Now, when COVID-19 hit and lockdowns and community quarantines took effect, what immediate effects were seen in the global education system? What are the gaps? What are the impacts in the entire industry?
I will give Rani and Wasantha a little time to think and just give a little bit of my story. So I was traveling in the US on the first week of March, and everything was pretty normal, actually, surprisingly normal given the situation we are in today. And I came back. I arrived back in Philippines on the 9th, late afternoon, early evening. And the first indication things were starting really to change was that my wife told me that that one of her friends had come home from China and he was now in quarantine for 2 weeks. And he's a teacher. And he was, basically the schools were closed and he was sent back home. And, in the next few days, we all were thinking about, is there something we can do to, get involved at this point in time in helping schools, in Singapore, in China, in Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, because those were the only places that were kind of having an issue. On the same week, Thursday, it was the 12th of March, we had a notice from our kids' school that on the 13th, Friday the 13th, they would do a dry run of home learning just in case there should be a lockdown. And within, I think, 48 hours of school finishing on Friday, we had a complete lockdown, and the kids are still not in school. In fact, I just got notified this morning that the school will resume on August 24th. So for us, we had a quite chaotic experience because what was supposed to be a dry run and then fine-tuning, the systems and procedures became like that's how we do it. And it took, like everything else has been happening this time, a few weeks for things to kind of align. But I can still see it's going to be a challenge unless we really help the schools, bring up the technology that is required. Because right now it's like every teacher is their own CTO trying to figure it out. And I don't think that traditionally there has been a strong IT CTO kind of move in schools, at least when it comes to the public schools and many of the schools in Asia as well. So that was my personal experience, and of course now we are in the midst of deploying teams and helping schools all over the region. So I can see a lot of good things happening, but we lost, I guess, around 1 month trying to figure it out. Not so much us, but the schools. So that was my personal experience. I think Rani has a much wider engagement in this, being, in the middle of the soup, so to speak, in that position in Microsoft. And of course, Wasantha has been quite involved in our education initiatives in Sri Lanka over the last few weeks. So I will leave it to you to share your insight as well.
I can go next if that's okay with you, Wasantha.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
So I think the first thing for us as an impact was what is going on. It was a fair bit of panic because in Microsoft, at least, we've been having these conversations about remote learning and home-based learning and having the right tools for years, and that's always been part of our strategy. But how this happened was so very sudden, and the questions were being asked of us, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next week? We had an unprecedented number of requests for large-scale support to move classes online from multiple countries, and lots of schools and institutions and teachers reaching out. I think what this triggered is as one of the impacts was that we saw an enormous amount of our education ecosystem partners, our own and competitors and ourselves all beginning to try and resolve the one issue, and that is the continuance of learning. Because of the lockdown, the primary focus was the students, and there was a lot of sharing. The impact was staggering, actually, because very quickly organizations came together. We saw publishers opening up digital libraries to help our students learn from home. We saw schools becoming a little bit more lenient with what tools were being used. Governments relaxed rules and restrictions to share ideas. So I think one of the biggest impacts that we saw was the fact that there was a lot of sharing that happened, and people sort of came together because the one purpose here was to continue the students' learning. Mm-hmm. I think overnight it kind of broke down barriers of what online learning faced for years. And however, what it hasn't done is solve all the problems and all the answers that online learning itself raises for education systems, like what's the learning outcomes. But these questions are all being tackled as we speak with very new urgency. So there were gaps as well that we have found, which are, technology gaps, students having limited access or no access in most parts of the region, infrastructure gaps, limited internet, but not as bad, limited internet in terms of learning and devices, but not necessarily phones, teacher knowledge gaps, content gaps, policy gaps. So there was a lot of gaps. But the wonderful thing about it was that everyone was listening and sharing to solve the problem, which was to get our students to continue their learning during the lockdown period.
Yeah, sorry, Wasantha, I just wanted to comment on that. I think it was very much not a question anymore of an if, right? It's about how. In all these past years, it's been, oh yeah, we will think about it, or if we are going to do that, or how can we possibly give the quality of education we want to give online. But that is not even the question anymore. Now it is about how can we get this going so the kids don't lose 6 months.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a little bit of a different perspective to the two. I mean, I'm not disagreeing, and I'm 100% agreeing with what you say.
Mm-hmm.
But look at all this time, the change is the most difficult thing. People don't like to change, and I have seen Lars was doing a few of these webinars previously. We were talking about who did the digital transformation for businesses, COVID-19. The same way, I think it applies to everywhere, and now we have been forced to go digital, and most of the time we always say, okay, we don't have resources, we don't have this, that's why we can't do this digital transformation. But if you carefully look at the Facebook, or we were looking at some of the numbers in the back end when in terms of deployment digital education to students, and 97% of them have some sort of access to internet, and 90% of the photographs of parents, if you see on the Facebook today, are their children are holding some sort of a device and sitting at home and trying to do something. So I think as educators, as the policymakers, the bridging the gap, we miss that one somehow, because it is a change. The change is difficult. I think that is what how do I feel? And that has been demanded now. So there's no way out of this.
You're right, Vasantha. I think when we look at majority of the requests and we sort of peel back the onion layers and see what the real requests are, predominantly they are not necessarily technical projects, but they are like true education transformational project requirements, right? That require quite an extensive change management, as you say, and see that COVID-19 as an opportunity to transform, because it has brought so many things that was in the back burner to the forefront. So I completely agree with you there.
That's true. Right. And if I could just like add on to something that Wasantha said, actually, so with me speaking from experience as a parent here in the Philippines, there are still a lot of schools that don't have or has not taken any steps into continuing education, and we're already well like in technically summer, but the school year ended without any notice of what the next steps would be, et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the reasons why is these schools, they don't have, like, as Lars mentioned earlier, like dedicated technical people, you know, like IT departments or like CTOs. And these are schools, these are private schools as well. So I think that is something, you know, talking about bridging traditional learning with remote learning. You know, how can educational institutions start and educators and students adopt to this transition, I would say.
Yeah, I think you know, there's a saying, you know, that when we talk about digital transformation in business, we say, you know, the banks are now no longer positioning themselves as a bank, but as an IT company providing financial services. I haven't seen the school yet who is an IT company providing educational services. So obviously, IT has been seen very much as a kind of enabler. You know, basically the whole idea of STEM education, preparing the kids for the future, more than kind of immersing them in the day-to-day work of actually using those tools to work from home. I mean, most of us who are working from home, I mean, all of us in this call are sitting in our respective homes. You know, there's none of us who are sitting together in an office, and we are even in, you know, not only in different homes, we are in different countries, right? We are in Philippines, in Singapore, and Sri Lanka right now with this call, and it's just you know, a different way of working and learning that has to be put together. And I think this is the biggest challenge. You know, Bill Gates was one of the very you know, if not one of the pioneers in terms of getting a computers out there. You know, every office desk and every home should have a computer. But if you have a computer at home now, you'll have, you know, 3 or 4 people standing behind that computer and waiting for their turn, because they cannot do anything for their school or for their office unless they sit in front of the computer. So that becomes the next challenge. Do we really want our kids to sit in front of the PC for 8 hours? You know, because they're e-learning, or how can education, you know, combine the screen time with other things? Because after school, they also have their own private screen time with their games and their social network and stuff. I mean, are we going to expect now in the future we are going to spend, you know, most of our waking hours in front of a screen? So education really needs to push more than just screen time. It you know, that still need to be the kind of the placeholder, but there should still be experiments, you know, things that people or kids do off the screen in terms of group work and stuff that they can still do with, you know, video conferencing tools and you know, work alone on project and then present the project. That needs to be broadened. I think this is the bigger challenge, because it's easy to say, okay, do these 5 modules in Khan Academy today, and then you are done, right? And then that is not really what I think we want. We want them to do maybe 1 module in one kind of learning and another module in another learning module, but they need to have that interaction with other kids as well, and they're hands-on, especially when it's younger. Now your child is 5, right? So
yes, she's
obviously it's a
5.
completely different scenario.
Definitely.
My son-in-law just was started studying, he's becoming a construction engineer, so he went back to school. Obviously, a grown-up have a different way of being able to manage that than a 5-year-old, right? And I have here at home, a 12-year-old and a 11-year-old, and it's challenging for them, but at least there's 2 of them together. But if you just have a single child, it's also more challenging. Like a single parent with a single child right now is probably one of the most challenging situations, trying to work and help your kid as well, right? So I think that's what we have to think about. It's more than just applying technology, but it has to be more of a framework. I'm actually keen on hearing that from Rani. What is your take on that? How are you going to do this?
Yeah, I hear everything that you have just mentioned, Lars, and that's the same questions, because when we look at education, often we are either addressing the student or the teacher or the institution. What I think we all need to understand is that the anything will do strategy that might have got us through the first few days and weeks will not sustain us.
Absolutely.
We need to look deeper to find tools, methods, systems, and solutions that kind of really meet the needs. And the needs are very, very varied, like Lars, what you just mentioned. Now that we are discovering what those needs are, which also includes the parents, institutions, I think, should take the lead on this with educators, because they are often drowning in the daily demands of teaching under this new norm and new paradigm. They are already overloaded and need strategic support. But you also mentioned the students, and this is an important adoption question for us. We cannot assume that just because we might be dealing with the younger generation that they are all automatically digital natives, even when they are not automatically digital learners, to your point, Lars, right? Many digitally fluent students still struggle to engage, focus, learn, grow, and this is where the pedagogy is really, really important. How we deliver is only half the battle. How we help them engage is just as important. So online learning, I think, is still a deeply pedagogical process, and we need to listen to the experts and understand and use a framework that allows us to cohesively think about the holistic student and the holistic teacher and what we need to help them in that process. And tools and technology is a big part, but it's not the only part. My husband, who's an educator, often tells me the biggest technology, which is the critical technology in the classroom, is the teacher themselves, because they are the ones who's facilitating. And so, yes, it is a framework. We need to look at it holistically and pedagogically. Just because it's online doesn't mean pedagogy goes down the wayside. It's more reason that you look at the holistic child, to your point.
Yes, Rani, so being online and available online only, I think, give some opportunities, because every teacher is not the same and every student is not the same. So having having understood that, I think being digital and being able to deliver much more we can say student focused education, student centric education is the I would say that is the way forward, and it will be helped by the technology today what is available. So I think this transformation should bring that individual students being able to study on their own pace, as well as that should help by being able to engage on their own time and follow at the same rates. But I don't know whether it makes sense what I said.
Absolutely makes sense, because I think technology has a great insight, especially when we are talking about data and cognitive services and AI. And I know these are all like really big terms when we are trying to tackle COVID and our day-to-day of trying to get students be engaged. But I think what this COVID has forced us to do is to say, yes, we are here and we are managing what we need to do day to day, but let's take a step back and look at the whole framework, to Lars' point and your point, Wasantha, to say, you know, how do we use this technology infrastructure or the technology services that we have to help with that personalized learning, and not just for the student to personally learn, but also for the teacher to be able to effectively provide that personal guidance that is required for the students. So yeah, technology is there. I think it's just that the adoption of that technology has been very slow, and COVID is forcing us to look at all of these technologies in a sustainable manner to provide that outcome for the students. So I agree with you totally.
I think one of the things that we have seen is that as the ratio of teacher to student has been, you know, in wealthier countries or in private schools, private education, you often see a much lower ratio to students per teacher. But in public school, and especially in emerging markets, the ratio is much higher. We can see something like 40 or 50 students to a teacher. I hope you know, we are not going to see that going digital will mean that we can have now 100 students per teacher, but it will help us to go a bit the other way around. You know, that we can leverage the technology also available now. Rani is talking about AI and you know how it can help us in education, but definitely there are things that the teacher picks up because the ratio with students is lower, and once you put in AI, big data, understand the analytics behind learning, you will start to see, you know, behavioral patterns where you need to pick up a child who is running behind for some reason, and you might not have noticed that in a school where there's a 40 or 50 students per teacher. So obviously having e-learning and having data available helps us to drive a different kind of learning, that we can assist the kids who needs more help in different ways, but we can also let the kids who are who find it easy to work with a specific topic, let them go ahead, because we don't need to bring everybody at the same pace, because we are not going to present the topic at the same time to the same group of people. So there are opportunities in this, and I think this is basically what we have been trying to advocate in the last few years, and this is what's going to happen now. Now, digital transformation is being pushed in education, and I don't think that there's any going back. I mean, I don't think anybody is expecting that in 6 months or 9 months we'll be back to normal kind of school. We have seen one of the issues we have had in Philippines is that we did not have a reasonable school year. We started with a number of typhoons that canceled schools for many people, and then we had a volcano eruption that canceled school for a couple of weeks, and then we went into COVID. So going forward, while we are expecting COVID to kind of ease out and disappear over the next month or maybe year, at least we know that weather is still going to be there. Volcanoes and eruptions and earthquakes and other kind of disasters are still going to be around, and being able to work from home or study from home during that time will be important. And maybe schools will even find that it's good for the kids to study at home a couple of days per week or 1 day a week or something like this. So similar, like we are applying that in the workforce, we are saying, okay, 50% you are in the office and 50% you work from home. Maybe working from home as a student has other benefits as well. So going forward, it should probably be a combination of the two. Maybe we can get the 22 to 1 teacher ratio, because it's not the same 20 kids every day. So, you know, the other 20 kids might be working at home on their own project. So there's a lot of interesting things that can happen here.
Yeah. Sorry, Dr. Rani, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think all the things that we are discussing, we are already seeing some really good examples of how COVID has already started getting our decision makers at the country level, at the institution level, and at the learning level already having these conversations. So I think a structured platform, as you've put up on the screen, is the key, and that structured platform, so that we are not making financial investment and learning outcome and skill-based decisions independently. We're not making those decisions without a framework. It has to be a framework, because for us to get the maximum out of every dollar that is invested in education, it has to be underpinned by what it is that we are trying to achieve as a learning outcome for those students, our future employees, so that, we are taking that into consideration, whether it be infrastructure or change management or investing in teachers.
Okay, awesome. So since we talked about what some schools are lacking, and we're talking about like the plan or how to plan moving forward. Now let's talk about what is happening already. Now, can you cite some best practices currently being done globally and specifically in Asia? So Dr. Rani, I'm pretty sure this is something that you could really you really have insight on.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, because I think, as we all know, education is one industry that we learn from best practices so deeply, and educators and education stakeholders are always willing to share. Now, I did have some examples in New Zealand where, but I also have some very, very crystal examples that's happening in our immediate neighborhood as well. So some of the best practices in New Zealand, where they have taken a whole lot, they've looked at the student and the student's learning journey in a day or in a week. And they've said, how can we use technology in such a way that we can not only impact what the student learns, what work-ready skills we need to provide them, but we are able to track the outcome of what learnings that they have, and then also work out, okay, if we are teaching the students and the teachers certain tools for collaboration, is that collaboration positively affecting the students' grade outcomes or the students' confidence in being able to collaborate with other students? So they've used many of these technologies like Flipgrid, graph APIs, to be able to develop small apps using Minecraft, all of these tools where the pedagogical thinking has gone behind it. And on the other side, they are measuring whether the students' outcome is aligned with what the country requires under a framework, and also as an individual person, whether they are becoming more confident, whether they are more articulate, are they collaborating meaningfully, as in talking in team groups. So they have done that as an awesome best practice in New Zealand. And that also goes with language boundaries, of making sure that that translates not just from a technical and their regular language competencies, but also in maths and Maori language, right? And then you take another example, like in Thailand, when the Thailand government ordered a complete shutdown of all on-campus activities in universities, for example, with only 2 days of warning, that left majority of the students and staff unprepared. They were unprepared for the new circumstances, especially in terms of technical aspects. So the ministry's solution was that they were going to immediately deploy the Office 365 A1 platform, and they were going to use the teams to support remote learning with a very quick and simple deployment, assisted by our very skilled partners who have the competencies to be able to do that. And they did it beyond simple video conferencing and included class notebooks, support on assignments, grading, and much more. And the outcome of that specific push that COVID made has meant that about 150 universities across the countries are now virtually able to do interactive virtual classrooms. And as I said, it's not just about video conferencing, it's about learning. And that support kind of covered 60,000 educators and 2 million students in such a short period of time. And I've got many other examples, like if you look at in Malaysia, for example, the announcement of the COVID lockdown led schools to temporarily close. It really disrupted all the states at varying levels. So with remote learning being the only viable option for them, the ministry urgently wanted to train teachers on a large scale. So we came in with the digital classroom administration, which is the ministry's DCA, they call it. They rose a challenge by conducting about daily webinars to help teachers in the new skills. And we help them with our productivity suite, once again, with how to use video conferencing and how to bring that for immediate outcome for the ministry. Now, the training webinars that was conducted by the ministry and us and our partners meant that we were able to not only cut costs for the ministry during times of COVID, but the training also was recorded because sometimes students don't have access and they can't attend this, so they can do it later. They were recorded and uploaded onto the ministry's learning portal. I think they call it Ruang Ilmu. All the sessions were accessible by all 430,000 teachers across the nation at any time, no matter where they were, whether they were accessing it from a phone or a PC or a shared PC. And we saw like 25,000 teachers at a time trying to conduct and use these tools. And the great thing, and I'll finish with this, Ara, was that the show of what happens when you can enable teachers and get them as part of the solution meant that right now, the digital classroom administration in the ministry is working with us to collaborate on a new program called eClass, with daily online classes targeted for 900,000 students sitting for the exams that are looming very shortly. So, this is just some examples. When push comes to shove and we need to find a solution, we will find a solution,
Thank you very much for that,
Dr. Because I've got a ton of examples, but I can stop now.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, my question for Lars and Wasantha. Now, what technologies do you think, as industry leaders, should educational institutions adopt, and how would these tools or technologies help these schools and institutions during these times?
Yeah, well, I think beyond the framework that Rani is talking about, there's a infrastructure as well that need to be put in place, which is very important. Not only the students, they need to have a PC or whatever we can call it, a laptop or something, but the teachers also need at their end to be properly equipped, not only again with a laptop, but with, an ability to do presentations on a board. And, that I think is the bigger challenge. I think we are always keen to find like a technical solution to everything, especially because that's our business. But beyond this, I think the biggest challenge here is the digital teacher. What does a digital teacher look like? Where's the digital teacher education? Not from Microsoft, not from us, not from a vendor side, but where is the education system that brings out these new type of teachers? You know, how long time are we going to wait to see them starting coming out? I don't know if there are any such programs, but definitely distance learning is already been happening for a long time. I think we are facing some challenges with our internet connectivity and with our number of devices that people need to be actually able to get on the system. So that's more of the infrastructure challenge I see. Being able to broadcast things on TV or other type of channels is important as well. But the digital transformation is quite wholesome. It starts with getting everything organized first, and I think this was the bigger challenge. There's some comments here, in our chat that there was a kind of a chaos going on, right? And I think also Rani was mentioning that in the first couple of stages. So we talk about this in the first stage of digital transformation, which is digitizing or fixing the past. Getting things connected and putting things online is just the first step, and then starting to develop proper methods and proper tools for education. And then the digital transformation will happen where the learning outcome will be improved. Because right now, I think we are just trying to catch up. What are we going to do? There's another comment here. What are we going to do with exams? Our traditional education system is based on the fact that we put a school bus in front of the house, and then we shuttle our kids to a school and leave them there for 5 to 10 hours, depending on their age, and then we shuttle them back. And then then they sit at home and do some work as well. So how are all the, and then when they have exams, they go there and sit in a controlled environment where there's somebody watching over their shoulder to make sure they're not cheating. And how is all of that going to transform? That it's a big mouthful that has to be eaten at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think, Lars, I want to just add something on the top of what you said. So the new norm where the students are joining the learning, at least I would say digital learning, not e-learning. So in the digital learning, there will be multiple platforms, multiple devices that owned by them, owned by someone else. It will be used to join this stream, and the security is an aspect that has to be really also has to be taken care of. So if you ask what new technologies and what areas that we should be focusing on, once the platforms are there, you need to look at the security in terms of not the physical security, but talking about how the students are being protected from various different influences that can come along with the digital paradigm. So I think that's an area again we need to keep the focus on all the educators as well.
Yeah, and I will also concur, and I say when learning was done in the classroom, it was also managed in the classroom, right? Some schools used various portals to help, but not many leverage them to the extent that they need to do now. Because learning portals, for example, are now needed to do more than they ever did, and not all are up to the task. Because some of the learning portals might not have, their objective is to deliver content for consumption, but their objective wasn't to personalize that content. So when we are looking at learning portals, we need to take into account what Lars said even earlier about how it's going to provide personalized learning, and what Wasantha is saying about security, because we are expecting these technologies to do more. We know they have to do more. We've always said that we have to do more. COVID has shown us we absolutely have to do more. So I think one thing I would encourage institutions to do is to consider how much more their existing technologies can do for them, and to know what others are doing with their portals and their interfaces, and the multi-touch that I say needs to work. It's not about one video conference that happens to a student. It's about how do we do our quizzes, how do we do our assignments, and how does all of that track against that student's identity, And there's a fair amount of that we need to think through as a framework conversation. And part of my role is helping institutions get in touch with the variety of industry providers. And I think my advice to everyone would be, whenever you're thinking about it, take into, keep in mind that it isn't just about one item, one interaction. It is also about what that interaction influences in many interactions that a student or teacher does, and do the research to find the right portals which is safe for our students and teachers to use.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much for that, Dr. Rani and Wasantha and Lars. Now, just a quick one, because we have a few questions here from the audience that I think are really, really interesting. One question here, quick turning to e-learning without any pre-arrangements has created some issues in Sri Lankan education sector. Most of the students are staying home without any smart devices. I just need to get your idea. And I think, with this question, it also applies here in the Philippines, and I'm sure in other Asian countries as well. A lot of students don't have smart devices to use. So let's hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, I think this brings the challenge of the home as well. Because it's not only the kids who are home, it's also the parents. So obviously the parents are playing a much bigger role in this immediate situation than maybe a few months back. In a few months back, we would ask the kids, okay, do you need help with your homework? And if they are older, they will say no. And if they're younger, they will say no. And then, we'll wait for the teachers to say, yes, they need help. But in most of the cases, our support as a parent is about helping them with their homework. Now we kind of became the assistant teacher. To make sure they're on track, make sure that they're doing their stuff, and some kids are good at it and some kids are not good at it. So the role of the parent suddenly became much different, which of course also to go back to the question is that this it has been chaotic, not only for the kids but also for the parents and also for the teachers, because most of us had very little warning. As Rani was saying, in Thailand they gave 2 days. I think here in Philippines they didn't give any. It was over the weekend that they announced that from on Monday there's going to be a lockdown, and we didn't even get any time to prepare. And on Monday the teachers could not even go to school and work together to try to figure it out. So there has been no backup plan almost anywhere. I think I don't know anywhere where they had a backup plan saying, okay, what happens if our schools are closed for whatever reason? So I completely agree with that comment. I think it's not only Sri Lanka, all the countries that I know of have had challenges with this, and the younger the student, the bigger challenges.
And also, Lars, I think I am fairly educated, and I have a son who goes to an international school. I have become, like you said, a teacher's assistant. And when he sits there and he is looking at his grade 5 maths, to be honest, I have no idea what he's doing in grade 5.
Try 7th grade math.
I know, right? And I'm sitting there.
Rani, I'm sorry, but it's not going to get easier. It's all uphill from here.
So I am sitting there.
Thank God my kids are big, so
how the hell am I going to help him? Right? I have no idea how I'm going to help him. So the person who asked that question, you are absolutely right. And whilst I don't have solutions for how we will handle that, what I will say is that this is letting us know that we have a serious gap in the way we educate our students. If our students and our kids are needing to go to a location and that is the only location that they learn from, we are never prepared for any emergencies. So, and one other thing that I would say was the question, Lars pointed it out earlier. He mentioned about television. There was one country that actually ramped up their learning immediately, and that was Korea. Now I understand Korea is a well-developed country, but the reality is they weren't prepared to get to all the students through their devices because they are fairly inward-looking when it comes to cloud technologies. What they did do is their education broadcasting service. They immediately put a lot of content on their education broadcasting service and went to 2 million students in less than 2 days. So that was a phenomenal feat.
It's an interesting thing. I just came to my mind when you mentioned that. I forgot the name, but there is some kind of a famous celebrity science teacher or science guy in the US that used to be only on TV, and it's like 20 years ago or something like this. And I watched, I think it was a Netflix documentary or something about this guy, and now he's kind of got celebrity status, and he's going around to all the schools, and all the kids want to have selfies with him, and some people are questioning, if he's really a real scientist, because technically I think he's an engineer, but he's talking about evolution and stuff like that. Now, when I told my kids about this guy, we know this guy because our teacher is showing those videos in our classroom. So actually, this kind of education is not new. If you watch something like Big Bang Theory, you can see they all adore some science teachers that were shown on TV and were able to capture the kids on a Saturday morning with some experiments and all crazy stuff going on, right? But it's interesting to see now that the in-classroom education actually became a teacher showing the kids that video that their parents probably saw on TV on a weekend, right? So we just have to go back and do something that we're already doing before, and we need to get the right people to deliver it. So it's going to be interesting and inspiring and things like this. But we are going to miss out on the classroom experiment, burning your finger on the Bunsen burner and the dropping a glass on the floor and all those things that we need to do as well. But definitely, if you have to bridge in an emergent situation, we're not talking about that the kids will never go back to school, right? We are talking about, will they go back to school sooner and later, and what are we going to do in between? Definitely, TV has a big role to play here, and TV not necessarily being on the physical TV, but like how Khan Academy has grown up, an inspiring educator who has built up, something around education there. So there's a lot of opportunities to do things differently, and TV and radio podcasting still has a big role to play. And I was also happy to see, I think Rani mentioned earlier about, some of the companies releasing, open source or kind of giving their books for free, from Harry Potter to Paulo Coelho, and others have been, listing their books for free to download. And one of the ebook providers have also given free access to many books that kids can listen to, online, and they used to have to pay, a membership for that, but during this time they can do it for free. There is a lot of things. There's a lot of opportunities to do things differently, but definitely TV will have a role in this, because that will reach, communities that don't have devices and don't have internet, right?
Yes. By the way, Lars, I think I remember the science show that you were talking about earlier. Bill Nye, the science guy.
Oh, yeah, the science guy. Yes.
Yeah.
So even you know him, right?
Bill Nye.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, and when I told my kids, and I told you earlier that like in 5th and 7th grade, they know the guy. It's not from TV, but they know him from their teachers actually showing that program in the classroom. So it's a bit awkward actually that it goes that way.
So still TV is valid, no? Last, so the TV that we use at this moment, the TV is still a valid medium. We have seen also, 2 channels now dedicated by the government for students learning. But I think there should be more, and I think as of today, as the first question, when I say that a lot of students are staying home without any smart devices, so that's, I think the only way to address this one would have been the TV. The reason is that no devices are, or no imports of devices are happening, even if you have money today. And
but you have a local manufacturer in Sri Lanka, so at least
yes, of course,
they can help. Because I think even not only imports are happening, in many places we could not get devices for both business and education, right? Because they are manufactured in China, and China was closed for the first couple of months of the year. Now maybe things are picking up, but at least in Sri Lanka, you know, there is a company there doing locally assembled educational PCs and laptops and stuff. So it should be possible, but of course they need to get their components from somewhere else. I guess you're not making all the components; they're more assembly than anything. But if they have a proper stock and so on, they should be able to help at least. But you know, it's also the time to get outside, and if you are living in a house, go in the garden and plant some seeds, grow some plants, and try to see how that works. And I've seen all kind of stories of parents, you know, asking the kids to clean the house and all the things that we kind of shielded them away from because they have to sit and study. Now maybe they need some hands-on experience with something as well. So let them get
life
that
skills
at least for these months, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's also an aspect of homeschooling that really takes into play, right? Yeah, a lot of like homeschooling and hands-on tutoring, sort of from parent or guardian for kids. So I think that's another thing. Now we have another question here. I think this is really interesting as well. Can you share more stories of successful shift to remote learning, and how did they go about it?
I can take that. Now we have several. We are collecting more data, and I'm talking about all of these cases where we've helped in almost all of our countries in Asia Pacific for COVID. So COVID-driven stories, there's many. I can share with you maybe one more, and then I will say that keep your connections with Sanjay very close, because we will share all of this in a very good document so that you can share some of these best practices. So for example, let me look. In Vietnam, the schools in Vietnam, due to minimum community spread of COVID, the students and the staff needed an online platform. So to help the students continue their study, so the Vietnam Ministry of Education and Training deployed video conferencing nationwide. Now they needed a lot of technical support, so they came to us, and in about 27 hours, in collaboration with the city and the local telco and us, we were able to deploy to 200 schools across all levels of learning. Now the outcome from that, and it took a mammoth effort by all of our partners in Vietnam as well. The outcome from it was that Haiphong City now has a very trusted, safe platform, because they were on a platform where they had some security breaches to deliver their online learning to their students. Not only that, the Ministry of Education and Training was also supporting all the other provinces as we speak to replicate that deployment for their students. Now, I say it in such small words, but even then, we are just trying to address the immediate issue. The true success, if you ask me about remote learning, will come in the days, in the months, in the near months, not too long in the future, where we are taking a step back from addressing, giving content and learning to the students today, and then start thinking about what the outcomes are. And that goes back to the lots of information that we shared today, is to think deeply about, okay, now we fix this problem, and we can consider that a success, because education, distributing education for the students happen, but whether that is actually giving them a learning outcome is the next question. And I think we'll be working and looking at all the examples that we have and taking it to the next level to share some of that best practices that has happened because COVID has forced us to look at the facts the way they should be, which is learning outcome for the students. So I have lots of them. In the interest of time, I won't share all of them, but I will share them later with you. Please reach out to Sanjay.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Rani. Now, we actually have one question here, just came in, but it's really interesting, I would say. And I think this goes for Wasantha and Lars. It's a fact that digital transformation, AI, and robotics has caused a lot of unemployment. If current education model is changed and we start adapting digital transformation, in future there won't be the need of as much teachers as we have per school now. Just wanted to know about the predictions on what might be the possibilities of the situation.
Yeah, so I think I hinted at that earlier. If you will think that, okay, I need to have every student in front of a teacher all the time, then we don't have a good teacher to student ratio right now globally. If you take the average, it's not good enough. Now, if you can say, okay, kids works sometime or half the time without a teacher and the other time with a teacher, you can effectively give a better teacher to student ratio. So you can go two ways with this. You can say, okay, then we can save half of the teachers, or you can say, then we can increase the quality of education. And I think, going back to kind of the core of this issue, the challenge we have is the skill sets that are needed are not being taught enough. So there is a lot of gap that need to be bridged with, science, technology, and math, right? Engineering and math. These are the tools that kids need to be able to prosper in the future. And of course, now we can see, it should probably be double M, because medicine is an important part of it. Science and medicine might be the same, but we need more nurses, we need more teachers, we need more doctors. And I don't see this. This is a political decision, more or less. It's not a matter of like an efficiency level that we have in manufacturing or in the office where we can automate processes. This is a political decision of the quality of education and how many teachers we want to get engaged. And if we want to save money there, I think that will be tough in the future. It's an investment that need to be made and continue to be made. And in education, I don't see that these tools are going to be replacing teachers, but supporting teachers and developing better education. And that's my opinion. I'm sure
I will also add something, Lars. So I think the digital educators versus teachers are two different type of people, in my opinion. So if on the other hand, if you take for an example, like Khan Academy existed for the last 10 years, or more than that. So if and it's free, and if everything can be learned just out of the web for students to become, nobody would have gone to school. But I don't think this is going to be true. And if you take from my personal experience into my career, document management, in year 2000, we were saying it is going to be paperless world. And soon, when we digitize everything, but it never happened. All the paper did not go away. Still, we have more paper than we find it every other day. So, having said that, the digital educators' role is going to change. They are not going to be the traditional teachers. Digital educators still require, because there are going to be assessments, there are rubric assessments to grading, and all those things has to happen, and then somebody has to manage the LMS. So their role is going to change, but of course, definitely these teachers are not going to go away. There will be a different or better role for them in that, and they will use material, maybe digital material, to teach students.
I concur. I think this is an age-old question. As we see modernization and digitization, what's the role of a teacher? And as a teacher myself, I can tell you that to Lars' point, the ratio that we see of student to teacher is appalling if you look at it as a global standard. So that's number one. We need more teachers. And when you look at the role of a teacher, I think we can have isolated conversations about digital versus what a role of a teacher is. And we still see the role of a teacher who is not just giving them content and consumption. The role of a teacher is also to build higher order critical thinking and all of these skills, life skills that they need. So the teacher provides context. There was a quote that I read a long time ago, let technology answer all of the questions and I as a teacher will provide context to my students. And I think that isn't going to go away. If anything, we need more teachers to be able to provide that personalized context for students, because we are leaving our precious children to become holistically prepared, not just smart, not just intelligent and factual, but also be conceptually able to apply those things. And that we still need teachers to do.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Rani, Wasantha, and Lars. So unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but we encourage everyone to send in other questions or concerns to our email. Now, once again, thank you very much to our speakers. I'm sure our audience learned a lot about digital and remote learning in the education sector. Now, if you want to activate remote learning for your school, you can try free O365 A1 for Education. Just shoot us an email at aliana@tech1global.com and we'll help you set up. Now, again, thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you very much, guys, for tuning into this webinar, and we look forward to having you on the next one. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Thank you, Ara.
for your
Thank you,
time.
Rani. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ara
guys.
and Lars.